Now this question is going to Deji. Deji, some people say that ESG has redefined stakeholder priorities. We did see a bit of that when Prof gave us some of his opening remarks. Are there any key ESG related provisions in the PIA? And do you think the energy sector companies and practitioners in this space should be aware of? Over to you, Deji. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Yes, you're correct. The PIA, as it currently is, contemplates the ESG. ESG was definitely one of the premises on which the PIA was drafted. Whilst many of us sought for additional provisions as it relates to energy transition, I believe that as currently drafted, the PIA currently covers the ESG issues. One of those key points is that we can see from the drafting that the mindset of the draftsman was to ensure that the new regulators, being the upstream commission and the midstream and downstream authority, one of their key objectives is to ensure that operators in the oil and gas industry, their operations are to promote healthy and safe and efficient and effective conduct of those operations, essentially making sure that operators undertake their activities in a manner that is sustainable. That's one of the key functions of both the authority and the commission. Another key function or key objective of the commission and the authority is to ensure that any infrastructural development as well is done in a safe, efficient, and sustainable manner. So it's very clear and evident that the objectives of the regulators is to promote ESG. In line with that, from a governance perspective, the PIA contemplates that both the authority and the commission can issue regulations, but to ensure that it's collaborative to those that have been affected, the process contemplates a key stakeholder engagement to ensure that all players are in line and in tune with whatever regulations are going to be issued by both the commission and the authority. And we indeed confirm that that consultative process is currently ongoing as it relates to some draft regulations that the upstream commission and the downstream and midstream authority are seeking to issue. As it relates to environment and social, one of the key provisions of the PIA, which many people are aware of, is, and this is flowing from our previous history as it relates to the relationship between oil and gas operators and their communities. Here, the PIA is very clear and very evident that there's an intention to foster sustainable and prosperous relationships between the operators and the communities. And so the PIA provides that there should be a host community trust system where certain settlers would undertake certain activities that are for the benefit of the communities within which the oil and gas operations are being undertaken. And there's also a financial obligation on oil and gas upstream operators to essentially provide about 3% of their actual operating expenditure in the previous financial year as a contribution to that fund. And that fund will then be utilized to meet some of the requirements and the requests of the host community, such as Medicare, healthcare, clean water, schools that we know that many of those communities are in their need of. In ensuring that operators are in line with the environmental laws of the land, there's a requirement that any licensee or lessee should submit something called an environmental management plan, which essentially will detail how the operators will take steps to cushion the impacts of their operations. And prior to that environmental management plan being approved, there's also a requirement that operators in the upstream oil and gas industry should contribute to an environmental remediation fund. This fund monies from this fund will be used to cushion the negative impacts of any activities of those oil and gas operators. So those are key provisions that essentially makes sure that operators in the oil and gas space comply with meeting the environmental requirements. One other point that I think is key to note is the requirement to ensure that you reduce or mitigate gas flaring. We know the negative impact of gas flaring to the society, to the economy, and to the people, and to the health and livelihoods of most of the people living within those areas that oil and gas has been exploited. And so the Petroleum Industry Act restricts the abilities of operators from flaring, save where they are permitted by the Commission or in the event of an emergency. And the PIA as well requires that licenses and lessees should ensure that they have a plan to eliminate gas flaring. So that's very commendable from the PIA. And lastly, so that I don't bore you with too many provisions of the law, is that previously the arrangement as it relates to decommission and abandonment was a bit vague. Whilst we knew oil and gas operators had the obligation to decommission and abandon areas within which they are done operating, the financial impact of same and how that will be met was not pretty clear. But here the PIA has been very clear and very detailed to impose an obligation on operators to create some form of escrow account, which will be held by a financial institution that is not an affiliate of the operators, which ensures some form of independence, that there will be sufficient funds that will be required to decommission and abandon any areas in which oil and gas operators have undertaken their activities. So I think those are very key provisions that the PIA seems to mirror the ESG requirements that are being globally talked about. I mean, the desire is that from here we'll seek additional improvements as it relates to an energy transition, but we can do with this for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Deji. I think we do see that the PIA does have ESG provisions well entrenched in it.